Chevy Chase brought joy to millions of viewers on Saturday Night Live, but his co-star never shared in their laughter. She witnessed him make racist jokes, which froze the entire cast. For decades, she remained silent about the fights that broke out behind the scenes. Now, at the age of 74, she's finally speaking out. The man who played lovable goofballs and bumbling dads wasn't the real Chevy. The real one pushed grown men against elevator walls, made writers cry, and made one woman swear she would never forgive him. Born in Lower Manhattan on October 8, 1943, to wealthy parents, his mother's wealth and privilege influenced his upbringing. It all backfired when Cornelius Vanderbilt Crane, an heir to the Crane Company fortune, adopted Kathleen Parker Browning. This decision connected young Chevy to the Vanderbilts, one of the wealthiest families in American history. The Crane Company was a major industrial force, making plumbing fixtures and valves, and was worth millions at its peak. Kathleen's mother had hoped that by naming her son Cornelius, Crane would leave them his empire. Instead, Crane severed all ties with them and donated everything to Buddhist charities. Neither of them ever got over it, and Chevy's mother took her anger out on him. Chevy's family tree included mayors of New York City, generals from the American Revolution, and even passengers on the Mayflower. It also traced back to John Howland and William Brewster, founders of Plymouth Colony. Additionally, Chevy was descended from an Hutchinson, a Puritan rebel who challenged colonial religious leaders. So to sum it up, Chevy wasn't just wealthy. His ancestors were woven into the very beginnings of America. His maternal grandfather, Rear Admiral Miles Rutherford Browning, was a legendary figure in American naval history. Born in 1897, he graduated early from the Naval Academy during America's entry into World War I. Later on, he became a test pilot and played a crucial role in developing aircraft carrier strategy. However, it was during World War II, while serving as Chief of Staff aboard the USS Enterprise, that Browning truly came into his own. In the span of 10 minutes, U.S. bombers destroyed 4 Japanese carriers, turning the tide of the Pacific. Browning's intricate planning was a key factor in making this epic event happen. His name, Chevy, has a rich history that dates back to the Ballad of Chevy Chase, an Old English tale about a brutal battle in the Cheviot Hills in 1388. His grandmother chose it to honor the Douglas clan, an ancient Scottish family that was once so powerful they rivaled kings. Even his nickname, Chevy, was infused with medieval bloodlines. However, even with all that legacy, he still faced family chaos when he was 4 years old. "Don't cry or make a scene, just keep going. I, on the other hand, refrained from doing either," she later explained. "I came on the set trying with all my might to act." It's ironic that she was filming a scene about emotional breakdowns while keeping herself together in real life. Sally's silence was palpable the moment she stepped onto the set, and he took note. "Are you okay?" he asked, gently pulling her aside. At first, she tried to brush it off, but she couldn't lie to him. "My father just died," she whispered, and Robin didn't even bother to listen. Hesitated before saying, "Oh my God, we need to get you out of here right now." There was no discussion, no production noise, just concern. Robin approached director Chris Columbus, who did more than ask. He demanded a rescheduling of the filming schedule so Sally could leave, and they made it happen. The remaining scenes were shot that day without her. Sally contacted her brother and began the grieving process. That moment had nothing to do with fame or deadlines. It had everything to do with humanity. It had come from a man whom most people knew as the overbearing comedian on screen. Years later, Sally shared the story, not for attention's sake, but because people never saw the sensitive and intuitive side of Robin. She claimed he could feel. 60th Street in New York was an unusual film that was unheard of at the time. Chase, along with Richard Belzer and Ken Shapiro, was a part of it. None of them were famous yet, but Chase's style was already distinct. He delivered lines so seriously, as if they weren't meant to be funny, and this made him stand out. Eventually, a man named Lorne Michaels, who was working on a new late-night show, noticed something in Chase that others didn't. At first, Chase didn't appear in the fake news segments that would come to define him. Was just a writer when Saturday Night Live first aired in 1975. But something clicked when he started writing jokes about President Gerald Ford. When he read them out loud, everyone laughed. Lorne Michaels noticed it too. Chase's delivery was better than anyone else's. After that, he was on camera. It wasn't planned, it happened fast. Chase debuted Weekend Update on the very first SNL episode with a line that would become iconic. "Good evening, I'm Chevy Chase." "You're not." Regarding his on-screen demeanor, confident, intelligent, and completely in charge, he pretended not to care that cameras were rolling, sometimes pretending to be on the phone and other times casually announcing that he had broken new ground with a segment called News for the Hearing Impaired, in which Garrett Morris would stand beside him and shout Chase's headlines at the camera. This would be seen as daring satire now, but it was groundbreaking back then. Chase's work on Weekend Update did more than just make people laugh. It revolutionized television. Subsequently, The Daily Show and The Colbert Report would adopt his model. He was the original, but nothing impacted Chase's legacy more than his portrayal of Gerald Ford. The real Ford had been a college football MVP at the University of Michigan and one of the most athletic presidents in U.S. history. However, beginning in November 1975, Chase turned Ford into a punchline by portraying him as an ungainly klutz who could barely walk 5 steps without tripping. Many believed this portrayal, and political analysts even speculated that the sketches may have swung the 1976 election in Ford's favor. Ford never fully recovered from the humiliation. In his memoir, he detailed how his weekly impressions, along with one recorded stumble, altered public perception of him. Chase's shocking departure from SNL came just 1 year after the show's success in October 1976. He publicly claimed that he was leaving because his girlfriend did not want to move to New York. But behind the scenes, it was all about power. Hollywood was calling, and he had already been nicknamed the heir to Johnny Carson. His fame was at an all-time high. Ford later invited Chase to the White House and joked, "I'm Gerald Ford and you're not." That one line proved just how deep the joke had cut. Then, the shocking news arrived. Chase quit. It was too much to handle, and the cast didn't take it well, particularly John Belushi. Belushi had always hated that Chase got all the best lines and screen time, and he once complained, "I go where I'm kicked, they throw me bones dogs wouldn't chew on." The animosity only intensified after Chase left, and Bill Murray, who took his place in 1977, later claimed that the entire cast felt betrayed. "We all felt mad he had left us," Murray admitted. "It felt like he jumped ship before the rest of us could." Things got even worse when Chase returned to host in 1978, telling Jane Curtin she couldn't be on screen with him because you can't share. Just minutes before the live show, Bill Murray and Belushi met in the dressing room. Words flew as Murray made fun of Chase's crumbling marriage. Chase called Murray's childhood facial scars lunar craters, and the feud escalated into punches. Despite Belushi's efforts to break it up, the situation descended into chaos, and Chase had to go on stage right after to deliver the opening monologue. Despite the feud, Chase won an Emmy in 1976 for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Variety or Music Program, and another in 1978 for writing. However, none of these victories could mend the ruptured relationships he had with Murray and Belushi. Chevy Chase went from being a funny TV guy in the 1980s to being the face of a new kind of comedy. His role as Ty Webb, a wealthy, calm, and spiritual golfer who seemed unconcerned about anything, but that was the point, made being lazy and wealthy look cool. Ty offered random advice, like a philosopher, barely responding to the chaos around him. The role did more than make people laugh. It shaped an entire character type for decades to come. The film cost only $6 million to produce, but it became an instant hit at the box office, earning nearly $40 million and becoming the 17th highest-grossing film of the year. It premiered in 656 theaters and continued to draw crowds for weeks. Audiences didn't want to miss a single showing and kept going back. However, not all critics were impressed. For example, Roger Ebert only gave it a 2.5 stars at the time, but things changed when it came out. ESPN later dubbed it, "maybe the funniest sports movie ever made." 3 years later, in 1983, Chevy did something even bigger with National Lampoon's Vacation, which he, playing the role of Clark Griswold, a caring but naive dad who takes his family on the worst road trip ever. He never once acted cool or collected his $15 million budget. The film, which was adapted from a short story by John Hughes, made over $61 million in the U.S. alone and became a brand, while Vacation made $49 million. £71 million was made by 4 Million Christmas Vacation. Las Vegas Vacation increased by $36 million. 4 million, while the 2015 remake made $14 million. The franchise made $322 million worldwide. Chevy kept the character alive for decades, never letting go of that awkward charm. Then, in 1985, Fletch came along, and if Caddyshack was cool and Vacation was chaos, Fletch was clever. Clark was a disaster, but he tried. He just wanted to give his family a good time. Chevy's acting chops were on full display as he went undercover as a variety of characters, a basketball player, a doctor, and a mechanic, in an effort to solve a mystery. His transformation into each persona was seamless, and the audience and critics alike gushed over his improvisational lines. "It's all ball bearings nowadays," for example, which went on to become inside jokes for an entire generation. Rotten Tomatoes went on to call the film quotably funny and fast-paced, describing it as one of his best performances ever. In the same year, he had the combination of his 3 big films, Fletch, European Vacation, and Spies Like Us, raked in hundreds of millions of dollars around the world. However, behind all that success was pain. In 1986, Chevy admitted to checking into the Betty Ford Clinic for a painkiller addiction. He later joked that his nose hurt too much, suggesting that pills weren't his only problem. His publicist attempted to downplay the story by saying it was a prescription issue related to back pain, but everyone knew it was more serious. In 2016, he entered a rehabilitation program for substance abuse. At 72 years old, he checked into the Hazelden Center in Minnesota for alcohol rehab. His team referred to it as a tune-up, but most people saw it as a sign of how long his addiction battle had endured. Then, in 1993, Fox gave Chevy his own talk show, spending over $4 million to launch it. The network had high hopes that it would draw in 5 to 6 million viewers per night, more than The Late Show with David Letterman. However, by the end, the show had dropped below 2 million viewers. The set was constructed in the Aquarius Theater, which had been renamed the Chevy Chase Theater, specifically for the purpose. In the early 1990s, Chevy's films began bombing in 1991, with Nothing But Trouble costing $40 million, but only making $8. The show was criticized for its awkwardness, and awkwardness led to its cancellation after 29 episodes. The audience consisted of retirees and people from halfway houses, because no one else wanted to attend. The set also had problems, such as fish tanks with dead fish and fake basketball shots edited to look successful. In the end, the show was ranked as the 16th worst TV show of all time by TV Guide. Memoirs of an Invisible Man earned $14 the following year, with $5 million going back. $4 million on a further $40 million budget, followed in 1994 by the Just 11 Cops and Robertsons. With over $100 million in total expenditures and $4 million in total earnings, studios began to lose faith in Chevy and stopped casting him in major roles. By this point, his name had begun to connote risk rather than gold at the box office, and he was no longer just fading. He was plummeting. Chevy Chase's first marriage to Susan Witt in New York City on February 23, 1973, appeared picture-perfect, at least for a moment. However, their fairy tale didn't last exactly 2 years, 10 months, and 9 days. They divorced on February 1, 1976. This was during Chase's meteoric rise to fame on Saturday Night Live, where his Weekend Update segment was making him a household name. However, behind the scenes, fame was already destroying his personal life, what with the pressure of sudden stardom, long hours, and ego clashes, leading to the inevitable breakdown of his marriage. The marriage collapsed less than 3 years after the vows were exchanged. This was the first red flag that Chase was having trouble maintaining personal relationships despite the increasing prominence of his career. Shortly after, on December 4, 1976, Chase wed Jacqueline Carlin, an actress and model. Their second marriage was explosive. In April 1978, Carlin filed for divorce, claiming that Chase had threatened her. This wasn't idle speculation. It was a legal action that suggested genuine fear for Chase's safety. After some time of trying to patch things up, the marriage was officially ended on November 14, 1980. The public continued to view Chase as the charming TV personality, but Carlin's court documents revealed a much darker side to their relationship. Then, when the divorce was finalized, Superior Court Judge Harry Schaefer ordered Chase to pay Carlin $400,000, a sum that, when adjusted for today's value, would be more than $1. The couple didn't have any children, so the large settlement of $5 million raised suspicions that the judge might have given serious consideration to her claims, but no details were revealed. On the set of the film Under the Rainbow, Chase met Janie Luke, a production coordinator. At first, she thought he was just goofing around, but they started dating. Their relationship wasn't rushed or reckless, and after 2 years of dating, they married on June 19, 1982, in Pacific Palisades. Finally, it stuck, and Janie gave birth to their first daughter, Sydney, on the same day. However, the size of the payment suggested that something went very wrong. The whole affair was a legal and financial nightmare for Chase. It was a costly lesson that fame doesn't protect you when the courts get involved. Beginning on January 4, 1983, Chase was joined by Kay in 1985 and Emily in 1988. Janie also became a stepmother to Brian, Chase's son from a previous relationship. Their marriage provided a stable home, a family, and a new side of Chase. The most surprising twist, though, was when Chase began turning down major film roles. He didn't want his daughters to see him kiss another woman on screen, so he turned down American Gigolo, Animal House, Ghostbusters, and Forrest Gump, all of which were career-defining hits. Chase explained, "Once I got married and had kids, I moved away from romantic roles." It was hard to believe that this man, who had been accused of terrifying his wife, could somehow turn it all around. Chevy Chase was once a beloved TV star, but behind the scenes he became known for something darker, and his actions became increasingly controversial. Years later, his daughter Emily put it all into words, saying her father was the funniest, most generous, and loving person she knew. Additionally, she revealed that he had been completely infatuated with her mother since 1980. Chevy leaned over during takes and said things like, "People think you're funnier because you're black." At first, it seemed like bitter jealousy, but show creator Dan Harmon later said that Chevy was the first to notice how talented Donald was, and instead of supporting him, he tried to bring him down. This continued a long history of harassment, racism, and violence on the set of Community, which only got worse. During an argument about his character's lines in 2012, Chevy lost it and said, "What's next? Am I going to say the word and how?" The entire set went silent as Chase apologized, saying he didn't mean it, but the damage was done. Glover, demonstrating restraint, told Harmon, "I don't even worry about it." However, it was evident that Chevy's presence was toxic, and Glover wasn't the only one. This happened in 1985 on Saturday Night Live. During Live Chevy's return as host, one of the new cast members was Terry Sweeney, who made history as the show's first openly gay performer. Chase immediately made fun of Sweeney, asking, "Oh, you're the gay guy, right?" Then Chase proposed a sketch in which Sweeney would pretend to have AIDS and get weighed every week. This wasn't just horrible comedy. It was set during the height of the AIDS epidemic, when thousands of people were dying from the disease. Chase's joke wasn't just cruel, it was dangerous. What's more, he proceeded to ask Sweeney nicely for advice on how to incorporate it into the sketch. Joel McHale, the show's lead, revealed that Chase and Male, a former college football tight end, got into actual fist fights multiple times. Chase pushed Male during a scene, and Male, who had warned Chase not to hit harder, responded, "Start by licking my balls." The cast was disgusted, and Jon Lovitz confirmed the whole thing. When Chase entered the elevator at the end of the night, everyone backed against the walls, trying not to touch him. In his 2016 book, Male even included instructions on how to fight Chevy Chase. The racism, fights, and cruelty were constant companions for Chase, who was already feuding behind the scenes. In April 2012, on the last day of Community's season, Chase stormed off set without filming a crucial scene. Dan Harmon was enraged, and the following night at the wrap party, he took the mic and led the crew in chanting, "Fuck you, Chevy," in front of Chase's wife and daughter. Chase did not take it quietly that night either. By late 2012, Chase's tenure on Community was coming to an end. Another N-word incident occurred during a table read. He was enraged about his character's increasing bigotry and once again snapped, asking, "What's next? Am I going to say the word and hi?" Harmon responded by playing the voicemail live at his next comedy show, exchanging a barrage of insults. Their feud had become public, ugly, and irreversible. Every member of the cast and crew overheard Chase claiming he wasn't directing the word at anyone. However, no one believed him. As a result, NBC postponed the season premiere, and Chase quietly left the show permanently. However, his fury didn't remain contained behind the cameras. In 2018, he was allegedly cut off while driving near the Tappan's Bridge. The 74-year-old actor proceeded to follow the truck across the bridge, flashing his headlights and tailgating at the next exit. Both cars were pulled over, and Chase yelled, "Do you know who the F I am? I will ruin your lives." Soon after, he made an attempt to strike him in the face with the. In a bizarre turn of events, 22-year-old Michael Landrio was charged with a crime, but he later claimed self-defense. Landrio told reporters, "I looked him up on Google, and I still didn't know who he was. He didn't look like he did in his movies." As a result, the pursuit came to a halt. In a CBS Sunday Morning interview about being called a racist and a jerk, Chevy simply laughed and said, "I don't give a crap. I am who I am, and I like who I am." This was in 2022, when Chevy had the opportunity to reflect and apologize. There was no shame, no regret, just a shrug. The stories kept piling up. In 1997, Wolfrell watched Chase walk around the SNL offices whispering vulgar remarks to one female writer. He said, "Maybe you can give me a hand job later." Frill later said, "I wish we'd all walked out of the room," after Lorne Michaels nearly kicked him off the show. By 2018, even younger comics, who had never collaborated with him, had heard enough. On Howard Stern's show, Pete Davidson called him a fuck. What began as one of the most promising careers in comedy ultimately collapsed into shame, not because Chevy Chase lost his talent, but because he failed to learn how to treat people properly. Eventually, not even Google cared about his identity. He is racist and a jerk.